You're sitting across from someone explaining why what happened didn't actually happen. Their voice is calm, their logic sounds reasonable. And for just a second you almost believe them. But your stomach tightens. Your jaw clenches. Something in your body is already filing a report your brain hasn't read yet. Here's what's interesting. You've been here before. Not with this person. With the adults who raised you. You're too sensitive. That never happened. I did it because I love you. You learned early that the official story and the real story were two different things, and your nervous system never forgot the difference. That's not trauma talking. That's calibration. The tough love generation didn't just survive emotional manipulation, they got wired to detect it. Faster, deeper, in ways most people can't explain but can't ignore. This is why. Your brain has a security system. It lives deep in the limbic region, a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Its only job is to scan your environment for threat, constantly. Before you're even conscious of what you're looking at, the amygdala has already run the numbers. It doesn't think, it pattern matches, and here's where childhood comes in. When a child grows up in an unpredictable environment, a home where love comes with conditions, where moods shift without warning, where the adult in the room says one thing and means another, the amygdala doesn't stay neutral. It upgrades. Neuroscientists call this threat system sensitization. The brain, in response to chronic low-grade stress, recalibrates its baseline. It stops waiting for danger to arrive. It starts assuming danger is already present. Dr. Martin Teicher at Harvard has spent decades studying how early stress physically reshapes the developing brain. His research shows that children raised in high-stress environments show measurable differences in amygdala reactivity, cortisol regulation, and the connectivity between emotional and rational brain regions. This isn't metaphor. These are structural changes visible on an MRI. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, floods the body during moments of threat. In a stable childhood, those floods are occasional. The system spikes, then returns to baseline. But in a home built on unpredictability, the floods don't stop. Chronic cortisol exposure keeps the amygdala in a state of high alert. The threat detector never fully powers down, and over time it gets faster, more sensitive, better at catching signals that something is wrong even when everything looks fine on the surface. This is what people dismiss as anxiety, or oversensitivity, or reading too much into things. It isn't. It's a nervous system that was trained by its environment to catch what others miss. A micro-expression that doesn't match the words. A tone that sits just slightly wrong. A story with a detail that doesn't add up. The body keeps a record of every time the official version didn't match reality. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's landmark research and his book of the same name showed that traumatic experience isn't stored as a narrative memory. It's stored as a body sensation, a knot in the stomach, tight shoulders, a sudden urge to leave the room. That gut feeling you get when someone is lying to you, that's not instinct. That's data, accumulated across years of learning to survive in an environment where reading people correctly wasn't optional, it was necessary. The tough love generation didn't develop this radar by accident. They developed it because the cost of missing a signal was too high. And once a nervous system learns to scan at that level, it doesn't unlearn it just because the environment gets safer. That wiring stays. It travels with you into every boardroom, every relationship, every conversation where someone tries to rewrite what just happened. Comment the word signal below if your body has ever known something was wrong before your brain had the words for it. Your ancestors didn't survive by being comfortable. They survived by being correct. In a world without contracts, institutions, or legal systems, the most dangerous thing another human could do to you was deceive you. A false alliance, a broken agreement, a leader who claimed safety but led you into threat. The cost of missing that signal wasn't embarrassment, it was death. So natural selection did what it always does. It kept the detectors. Humans evolved to be exquisitely sensitive to social deception. Psychologist Paul Ekman spent decades cataloging micro-expressions, the involuntary flickers of real emotion that cross a human face in under 1/5 of a second before a practiced mask takes over. We don't learn to read these. We are built to read them. The machinery comes pre-installed. But here's what evolution didn't account for. It didn't account for a world where the deceiver is also the caregiver. For most of human history, threat came from outside the family unit. The tribe protected you. Home was the baseline of safety your nervous system could return to. The detection system was designed to scan outward toward strangers, rivals, predators. When deception comes from inside the home, the system short-circuits. A child cannot afford to see a parent as a threat. Psychologist Dr. Freyd developed betrayal trauma theory to explain exactly this. When the person harming you is also the person you depend on for survival, the brain does something extraordinary. It suppresses the awareness of the betrayal to preserve the attachment. You don't consciously register the manipulation, but the body does. It stores it. Every contradiction, every punishment disguised as love, every gaslighting episode dressed up as concern. The nervous system keeps a ledger even when the conscious mind is forced to look away. This is the core conflict. The evolutionary wiring says detect and respond. The survival dependency says stay and adapt. The child caught between those two imperatives doesn't get to choose. So the brain splits the difference. It detects everything and expresses nothing. That suppression has a compounding effect. The signals don't disappear, they accumulate. And when those children become adults and step outside the environment that required silence, the detectors don't power down. They finally get permission to work out loud. What looks like hypervigilance in adulthood is often just a detection system that was never allowed to do its job openly. It isn't dysfunction that appeared. It's function that was delayed. This isn't theory. The data is extensive. The CDC's Adverse Childhood Experiences study, one of the largest investigations of childhood trauma ever conducted, followed over 17,000 adults. It found that roughly 64% of participants had at least one adverse childhood experience. More than 1 in 8 had 4 or more. Those numbers matter because ACE scores don't just predict health outcomes. They predict how a nervous system processes the world for the rest of a person's life. Researcher Nadine Burke-Harris, who later became California's first Surgeon General, built her entire career on this data. Her clinical work showed that high ACE individuals demonstrate measurably heightened stress responses, but also sharper social pattern recognition. The same sensitization that creates anxiety also creates acuity. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that individuals who experienced childhood unpredictability were significantly faster at detecting untrustworthy faces than their peers raised in stable environments. Their nervous systems weren't broken. They were optimized for a specific environment. The problem is that optimization doesn't switch off when the environment changes. The detector stays hot. And a hot detector in a safe environment reads like a disorder. Comment ACE below if this reframe changes how you see your own patterns. Here's what nobody tells you. The thing that was used to silence you made you harder to silence. Gaslighting works by creating doubt. It needs a target who will override their own perception when presented with a confident alternative version of reality. It needs someone who learned that their feelings are negotiable. But a nervous system trained on chronic inconsistency doesn't negotiate easily. It has too much data. Psychologist Maria Konnikova, in her research on con artists and deception, found that the people hardest to manipulate long-term weren't the most logical. They were the most somatically aware. They trusted the knot in their stomach over the polished explanation in front of them. That's the plot twist. The tough love generation was handed a tool disguised as a wound. The cost is real. The anxiety, the distrust, the exhaustion of never fully relaxing in a room. That cannot be minimized, but neither can the gift. Sharper empathy, faster pattern recognition, an almost unconscious ability to sense when a person's words and intentions don't match. These aren't soft skills. In leadership, negotiation, and relationships, they are rare advantages. The nervous system that was called too sensitive was actually too accurate for people who needed it to be wrong. The goal isn't to dismantle the detector. The goal is to become its operator instead of its hostage. A hyper-vigilant nervous system running on autopilot is exhausting. The same system under conscious direction is a superpower. Here's how to make that shift. Name the signal, not the story. When your body fires tight chest, clenched jaw, sudden unease, don't immediately build a narrative around it. Neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research showed that simply labeling an emotion in words reduces amygdala activation measurably. Say, I notice tension instead of something is wrong and I need to figure out what. The label creates distance. Distance creates choice. Run a reality check with your body, not just your mind. Before you accept someone's version of events, pause and ask one question: what does my body say? Not your fear, not your people-pleasing reflex, your actual physical response. That response has a longer memory than your conscious mind and a lower tolerance for contradiction. Build and trust slowly. The tough love nervous system doesn't respond to reassurance. It responds to consistency over time. Stop expecting yourself to trust quickly and start tracking behavior across repeated interactions. Data accumulates. Trust follows evidence. The nervous system you were given wasn't a mistake. It was a response to a real environment. Your work now isn't to get rid of it, it's to update it with new information. You survived an environment designed to make you doubt yourself. You're still here, still reading, still paying attention. That's not damage, that's endurance. And endurance, aimed in the right direction, looks a lot like strength.